Agents, what's going on, guys? Sly here, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there who celebrate such a thing. Now, I know quite a few are from Europe, South America, a few Aussies and Asians out there, and in staying with tradition, I want to let y'all know that however corny it might be, I am always thankful for the ability to be able to produce videos for you all, as well as having a great set of hardcore viewers so early in the YouTube channel. Guys, I sincerely appreciate it, as well as to those who've watched my vids before. Thanks, guys, for a solid year so far on YouTube, and here is to the next. Alright, so this time around, we're going to talk about, you guessed it, survival. Bum, bum, bum. Big surprise, right? You know, I was going to put out a guide a week or so ago before it dropped on the 22nd, but I wanted to wait and see if any changes would be made to the actual release. So, survival, as y'all can probably tell by now about the amount of videos I've put out, so far, not really the biggest fan. It's fun, it's different, but in my personal opinion, it's just too hard for the average player. It takes too long, and it takes way too much effort for very little payout. And you can simply get all that other gear anywhere else in the game. In my personal experience, I want to stress that these aren't official numbers, but just from the amount of times I've personally played survival, which is a lot by now, it has a success rate of barely 10%. That's conservative numbers. Usually less than half actually make it into the Dark Zone. Another quarter die in the DZ, and then out of that, very few actually survive to make an extraction. Now, as you can see by the names flying by on the bottom half of the screen here in a few minutes, it's almost comical how many people die within the first 5 minutes of launching survival. So in this video, I wanted to help you all out there get ahead and make it to the extraction. So we're going to go over what to do, what to look for, and what priorities you should be placing in order to be prepared for what lies ahead. Alright guys, well, let's start it off. So as most of you already know, you're basically starting off with nothing here. I mean, hardly any warm clothes, no weapons to speak of, and very little armor. Skills are stripped as well as your inventory. So first things first, look around your starting hideout. You would be surprised how many people run out the door first thing. There are a few items that you can snag in the very beginning. Some bigger hideouts will have more boxes than others, so make sure you take your time and take a look. The key to surviving survival, y'all, is being patient and taking your time. You do not want to rush into the DZ instantly, and you want to use as much time as you can. So expect at least an hour-long experience per run in the beginning. Until you learn the ropes, it takes a long time to get prepared for the end. So again, this is all about time management and stalling for as long as you can. The longer you can loot and craft, the better your chances for survival are. Now, there should be some starting meds in your hideout. Whether you want to use it now or later is up to you. I personally use a med the instant I have them, and in case I run into a lot of them, I'll have room for them. So the first rule is that you never want to leave anything on the ground unless it's clothes lighter than what you already have. Whether it's a med kit, meds, food, water, drink, take in as much as possible. So if your inventory is full with med kits, use one if you're slightly hurt and then pick it up, or drink something and then pick up the bottle of water. Waste nothing, and even if it's green armor or crappy weapons, pick it up and break it down for materials. Never leave anything behind. Time management as well as item management are very important here. Alright, so at first, while you're still warm, you need a plan of attack. Now, there are many ways you can go ahead and do this, but I'll tell you what I prioritize, and it's worked very well for me so far. So, first things first, scout around the hideout and get supplies as well as warm clothes. That's pretty much your first step. If you don't find a weapon while you're out there within the first 10 minutes or so, obtaining a weapon is your first priority. I honestly believe that an SMG is the best way to go at first. Assault rifles really need a lot of mods before they honestly become good weapons in the division, while SMGs are super stable and effective right out the gate. So my opinion, craft an SMG if you have to craft anything. Hopefully you'll find something out there in the world a little bit better later on down the road. So priority number 1, weapon. Priority number 2, getting your skills back. Now unfortunately you cannot craft a first aid skill until you're in a hideout closer to the DZ. So depending on your style of play, I recommend Pulse as a first option for the added DPS as well as enemy awareness, because you can't see crap in here, guys. Sticky bombs are super powerful in the early stages and will help you early on. Or a turret for added protection or to lure enemies away. That's what I recommend for now. Unless something else pops up that I'm unaware of, those are your best options. And of course, you need to craft the first aid the instant it becomes available to you. Next priority is going to be warm clothes. Now, whether you find enough along the way or if you have to craft a few, Whatever you have to do, make sure you get warm clothes as your next option. Next priority is crafting an extra slot for your med kits and filling that up. This should be done before you reach the DZ. Alright, so recap guys. Number 1, weapons. Number 2, get your skills. Number 3, get warm clothes. And number 4, craft an extra med kit slot and filling up your med kits. Like I said, get all this done before you even think about going into the DZ. I would actually take your time going into the DZ until you have like 30 minutes left. That'll give you some extra time to get higher end loot while still having enough time to extract. Alright, so with your priorities in place, now you need to go looting safely. So next up, open up your map. What I like to do is throw down a waypoint of areas that I want to check out. You can get turned around in the snow very, very quickly. And in my first few games in the PTS, I found myself simply running in circles going by stuff that I already looted. You can lose tons of time doing that. So make sure you set a waypoint, and at the beginning, set a point that runs through some burning barrels or hideouts. The most dangerous time, guys, is right now, right at the beginning. No clothes, no armor, and no weapons to speak of. So if you see enemies, scout out how many there are and only fire on them if they are red bars only. If it's a pistol, you cannot take down veteran or elite enemies. You will die. So honestly, the best thing to do is go stealth mode and skirt around them. I usually like to do a large circle around my initial hideout, looking for water, food, meds, and clothes. If you see any tents or small alleys, those are a great place to start. When it comes to clothes, you can instantly see if they are warmer than what you're wearing by the gauge on that little menu. If it's a green arrow, immediately equip it. That means it's better. If it's a red arrow, then leave it for the others. Maybe somebody else needs it. The instant you find water or soda, I would drink it. It quenches your thirst, but more importantly, it highlights loot that is nearby that otherwise you might have missed. Soda actually doubles the range at which you can see loot, so if you're running down a street, you can see stuff across the street that you can go to pick up. You can see through walls, below, above you. You should always have a drink active if you can. Subways are an absolute goldmine when it comes to drinks. The hallways that lead towards the tracks are always filled with vending machines, and you can loot those for soda or water. Like I said, try to have one active as many times as possible and stock up before you leave the tunnels. Alright, so after you scope out your area, you need to make a decision here. If you're super close to the helicopter crash, you can score some very useful items there and usually weapons at the crash scene, but there will be enemies. However, they are usually normal red bars, so they're not that bad. You will see quite a few people die trying to get these supplies from the helicopter, so if you're far away from the crash, don't bother, it's going to be looted by the time you get there. If you don't see a crash site close, look for a landmark. It's the purple area with the fist in it. If one of those are close, they do offer a lot of useful loot, but these areas are tough and they will contain a veteran or elite enemies. I wouldn't recommend these unless you stocked up on medkits and you have a full set of weapons at your disposal as well as your first aid skill. But still, scout it out. Sometimes you can draw enemies away with a turret, or others will have died trying to get the loot and use that to your advantage. You can slip in undetected through the snow and look for these odd colored boxes. They will have good stuff in them. Besides those two places, which everyone can see, you need to keep your eyes out for another two very important places. Those are pharmacies and apartments. Pharmacies are a gold mine for medkits, painkillers, and medicine, as well as a few other items if you're lucky. You need all the time you can get here, so stopping it with meds is essential to get the time you need to slowly beef up your character. Apartments are usually full of food, drink, and sometimes weapons or armor, but more importantly, apartments and homes are full of clothes. They are the best place to find the warmest clothes possible. Boots, jackets, hats, and scarf with high temp ratings. They're usually all found in homes. So keep an eye out for scaffolding that lifts you up to a broken window, open doors, ladders, patios, etc. Like I said, always have a drink active if you can, or at the very least, while you're in an area that you're sure contains loot, like a house, subway, a shop, back alley, places like that. You don't want to miss out. Usually the harder an area is to get in, the better the loot. So small closets at the far end of a tunnel, or apartments on the 5th floor only accessible by like a ladder or a broken window, maybe a rooftop, those are the places where large loot crates will be hidden. So the more you explore, the more you're rewarded. Alright, so one last thing to keep in mind, a lot of people are going to die here. One of the best ways to take advantage of that is when you look on your map like you can see right here. You're going to see a lot of red X's. Those are places where other agents have died. Now, if they have died, that means there's nobody on that side looting. So if you see 2 or 3 X's immediately up north of you, that means nobody is going to loot from that death site onward. So head up there and you know no one is going to loot. Guys from your south can come in your area and loot away. But if you head north where there's nobody there, you know that there's going to be twice the amount of loot and still stuff to find. As you can see here, I run into people quite a bit in the very beginning. So getting away from that and on your own track where you know there's going to be good loot, that's a good start. Alright guys, so now that you have those priorities in place and you've looted all around your area of the map, it's time to head inward. Follow the little compass on the top left, or I like to just set a waypoint, looting all along the way. Before you go in the DZ, make sure you have a full setup of weapons. Hopefully you'll have some purples there as well as some purple armor by the time you get in there. Make sure you have warm enough clothes that you can stay out for a little while. Have full med kits with an extra slot and your skills should be present. Some enemies will be higher inside the DZ. They will have a lot more veterans and a lot more elites than were outside of the gates. So the idea is basically the same inside here. Loot as much as you can, but don't bite off more than you can chew. The name of the game now is to keep stalling for time. Keep looting or keep crafting higher gear, and at some point, you're going to need to navigate towards the antivirals. Now by this point, you're going to have your first aid skill. You should, if otherwise you shouldn't go inside. Medkits and canned food alone will not get you through the DZ. So that goes without saying, you use your medkits as a last resort only. If you're hurt, use canned food and cover first. If that doesn't work, go ahead and use your skill and medkits as a last resort. Now you have a couple options here. You can keep looting and stalling for time, waiting to piggyback off someone else's extraction, or you can start one by yourself. Both has its advantages, and fighting with somebody else is always a smarter option. You can revive each other if need be. The problem is, the death rate for solo survival is so high that by the time the extraction part happens, you're down to single-digit numbers out of 25 agents. In every game I've played solo, the highest number I've seen at the end was 8, but usually it's always down to 4 to 6 left. So you could be waiting for quite some time. With that in mind, use every second you have to upgrade your defenses. Hunters, guys, they are no joke, and if you're going to go it alone, you are in for one tough fight. But if you start an extraction, chances are people will come to you. However, you need to be cautious here. Starting it will trigger a hunter, and the best bet is to not get caught by surprise. If you're not ready for him, you're going to be in for one quick death. My best advice is to trigger the extraction and then run away for cover, like run far away. Look for allies to fight with. They were going to be your best bet for getting out alive. Once you're down to about 10 minutes in time, start using every med syringe, every painkiller possible. Once it hits 8 minutes, you need to be en route towards your extraction, preferably sooner. It takes about 4 minutes to call it in, so if you don't shoot a flare off by around 5 minutes left, you're probably going to fail. So while you need every second, at the end, it's better to waste a few minutes and be safe than have all that work go to waste. Alright, the final thing to remember is that while you're in the DZ, you can finally start to afford to be picky about your gear. You need to go high armor and stamina as much as possible. I personally am all about having extra firepower, and it works well for the most part because you can kill stuff before it even becomes a problem. But when you're extracting, you need as much protection as possible. Unless you're in a group of 2, 3, or 4 at the end, you need health and damage mitigation. If you can get lucky enough to find some protection from elites, equip that even if it has a little less armor or stamina. That's going to help you out better in the long run. The loot system here builds upon what you have equipped. Every time you open something up, it will read what you have on and then drop you something a little bit higher, or if you're lucky, perhaps like a big loot chest, then it'll drop you something a lot higher. So the more you upgrade yourself, the more protection loot chests and items will be. And that all boils down to time. So time management is absolutely crucial here, and buying yourself that extra few minutes every so often with medication will end up to be a ton of time saved over the course of this activity. Now, it is equally important to have the highest grade of weapons and armor, but if it boils down to it, prioritize armor over your weapons if you have limited crafting material. Break down everything extra and only keep what you have equipped. Don't forget to scroll towards the bottom and convert all of your green crafting materials into blues, and then blues into higher end if you're at that stage. If you're lucky enough, all of your blues will turn into yellows. The faster you can craft and loot, the faster you'll have access to higher protection, and that is key going into the final run of survival. Once you got the antivirals and you're at the end and you've made your decision to extract, use the extra amount of time to raid monuments. You can get lucky here and get stuff to extract along with antivirals, and you can also get better gear for the fight ahead. It's critical that you use as much time as possible. That's the real name of this game. Prioritizing essentials early on, time management, and then item management and patience. This is a very long activity, and there's a lot of stuff to do here. Every time you go into survival, make sure you're ready for the commitment it takes to get through it. If not, you're going to end up dead very, very easily. But that's about it, guys. The most aggravating part about survival is the squishiness of your character and the length of time it takes to complete this activity. It's pretty fun at first, but it gets so drawn out, and if you try to rush it, you'll end up being not ready to face the end challenge, and that pretty much means certain death. Being in a group helps a ton at the end, but I recommend to keep apart right up until you're about to extract. Otherwise, competition over items will start to become fierce. Alright, well, good luck, agents. It takes time, but you got this. Practice always makes perfect. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and for the constant support of the channel. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there, and thank you so much for a year of YouTube. Always feel free to follow me and hit me up on Twitter at SlyNation, or subscribe to me here on YouTube. Keep an eye out for more Division videos coming out here very soon, but until then, this is your boy Sly. Later, guys.
Okay, Agent, I'm impressed. Riker gonna be too busy.